Hello and welcome to this BAFTA Guru session. This discussion is going to be sort of split into 4 different sections, and we will take audience questions with each section. We know it's a strange time and it can feel really weird and strange about trying to find jobs, but I believe that this too shall pass. The topics that we're going to cover today are CVs and cover notes, interviews, networking, and in the workplace. So just to start us off with our amazing guests, Kathy, Rebecca, and Michelle. We all had to start somewhere, and sometimes our first job is not necessarily the job where we end up with. I started out working in a kebab shop in Dublin, servicing kebabs and more kebabs until about 6 o'clock in the morning to all the nightclubbers I really want to be joining. But obviously I've now turned a corner in producing, which is great. But we do always start out somewhere. And so I'm going to start with Rebecca. What was your first job?
I was always drawn to movies. So my first job was working in a cinema and literally cleaning up popcorn and mess after people when they left, which was sometimes disgusting. But the benefit was I got to watch almost every single movie that came to the cinema for about 18 months as a teenager. So there were perks, definite perks.
And Michelle, what was your first job?
I was a teacher, so I taught secondary after I qualified, and I taught in Bethnal Green, a really tough comprehensive school, where I often got mistaken for one of the kids, often.
Oh, I wish for those days. And Kathy, how about you?
Well, I guess if we go back to my first job, it was in Whatney's Brewery, in the kitchen, clearing up everybody's breakfasts. So I suppose that was my first job of many small jobs. But yeah, that was probably the most glamorous of all of them, I think.
And did you have to fill in a CV for that job?
No. No, I think I just turned up and looked as if I needed work.
But talking about CVs, because obviously that would have been one of the first things in your CV, do you have any pointers about sort of what to include on CVs? And how relevant those first jobs are?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah. So in terms of a CV, obviously I think most of the guys watching today are starting out. So it's really about looking at the job you are applying for. So if it is relatively, first or second job, then first of all, the most important thing is really to have that profile at the top in terms of who you are and what you're looking for. And then really pull out the points, even if it's minimal experience you've had, pull out the points which are relevant to that job. The CV can change quite dramatically over the first 2 years, and it may look very different once you start getting a few jobs or a few work experiences under your belt. But initially, it just needs to be pulling out what's relevant to your background into what you want to do. It can really change. I mean, maybe a bit further on, we can talk about how I would do a CV after 2 years experience.
Okay, Michelle, what do you like to see on CVs?
Again, I think it depends if you're talking about someone who's a beginner and has just left college, uni, or decided that they don't like the job that they're in. It's basically your work experience that I need to see, and I need to see how you can pull apart your work experience, and whether you're paid or whether you're not paid, but what are the skills, what are the transferable skills? And again, it's looking at the job that you're applying for and thinking, how can I match some of those skills? People know when they look at a CV, if you're a beginner, they're not going to expect you to have directed a film or even have been on set, but they want to see that you've got those qualities that will enable you to do the job, even if you're coming in as a runner or, as a data wrangler or something.
And Rebecca?
I see hundreds of CVs every week and send them through to production companies. And one of the number one complaints is how they start out at the top of the CV. So just being really practical, name, email address, and phone number, and make sure you're contactable, because sometimes I ring through and the phone numbers are out of credit or you can't reach the individual, and that's a lost opportunity. And then definitely the profile, like Kathy said, especially when you're starting out. We don't really do or expect cover letters nowadays for quick email submissions, but what we absolutely recommend is a profile, which is a substitute for the cover letter, where you can say, I've recently graduated, or I'm looking for an entry-level position, and I make a great cup of tea, or whatever skills you have that you think will make you excellent at an entry level. And I think if I'd add one more thing, just to be realistic, they know there's entry level people out there, or people looking for their first or second job. So you'd be surprised how many runner, trainees, and PA positions are out there, and apprenticeships. And those are excellent places for you to look if you're starting out.
I think one of the things that I look for is sort of a full clean driver's license. But one of the things that I see on CVs sometimes is people go provisional driver's license, but I can't insure you on a set if you've got a provisional driving license, because technically that isn't a full clean license. So what sort of common mistakes do you guys see on CVs? Michelle, I'll come to you on this.
When people overinflate what they've actually done. So I shot this film, and actually they may have done a minute, or, you know, they've not been absolutely honest. And we can see from a CV, we can check, we can just look at a CV and know whether it's true or not. So I think the thing is, the ones that stand out for me are the ones that are honest, the ones that are very clear about what they want. And I just personally like a sort of feel of someone's personality. It's very difficult to get that from a CV, but just the way you lay it out, make it very clear. I like clear type fonts. I like to not be sort of not something razzly dazzly. Just something really clear and sort of talks about you. And I think, as both Rebecca and Kathy have said, you know, the profile part is really important when you don't have a lot else on your CV.
I think that point about embellishing CVs is really important, because getting a 2 or 3 page CV for somebody who hasn't come out, you know, hasn't been working necessarily and just come out of education. And sometimes when you get a really long 2 or 3 page CV, would you prefer to see a 1 page CV, Kathy?
I would at the start of a career, yes. I always say, though, that, you know, once you've actually got a bit of experience, don't feel you have to stick to 1 page, because, you know, by making the font smaller or something like that, it's okay to go to 2 pages. So don't feel you have to. But just picking up a point that Michelle said, I think unless you're actually going for a design job, just keep your CV really simple. You don't need to do lots of colours and photographs and, you know, lots of different fonts, because actually, especially, and probably all 3 of us here today have got some form of database. Databases hate mad CVs. They actually like really simple ones. So, you know, absolutely there's a time and place for them, but for most jobs, just send a really simple CV. And just to add to another point is, don't waffle. Keep it really, really, really clear, bullet point where possible. You don't need to do that, I was this and I was that. Just basically, you know, put it very, very simply as a short sentence, because, as Rebecca said, loads of people are going to be applying for jobs, so yours needs to stick out.
Okay. Where you mentioned earlier that you get a lot of CVs sent to you. Where do people send their CVs?
Is that for me?
Yeah, Rebecca, you, sorry.
So, and I invite people watching, you're welcome to join. We have with Film London, we're a charity, and we run the Equal Access Network. So we work with a lot of studios and networks, Disney, Netflix, Warner Brothers, to name a few. They try to come to us to diversify their incoming workforce. So for free, we post jobs to our network, and you're welcome to join. And like just lately, we've had a lot of trainee positions in the different studios, new films, big budget films that are coming to London are looking to get a diverse entry-level apprentice and trainees across all departments on their films and Netflix high-end television shows. So I'm really happy to be a liaison between those companies and also the youth or entry-level positions that are trying to get into the network, because I think it's sometimes tricky, especially during COVID, to find those opportunities. Do you mind if I add a couple things I see problems on CVs?
Yeah, please do.
Some of the obvious ones are, some of them don't open for everyone. So please make sure you save it as a PDF. And when you email your CV, make sure you save it as your name. A lot of recruiters and managing directors will organize their inbox by name, and they'll search for you by name. So if they saw somebody named Chelsea that they want to hire, if that's the name of your CV, that'll really help. And also, if your CV is bigger than 1 megabyte, it'll get deleted, unfortunately. So I get some portfolios through to me that are like 12 megabytes. It might be smarter to create a web link for your portfolio if you do art and direct people there, or post it on LinkedIn would be what I would add to that.
Michelle, you've got a website as well. You're My First Job in Film. So that's
My first job in TV. Yeah.
And people can post their CV on there.
No, basically the website is really sort of information. So it's information, anything you need to know about a particular role that you want to apply for or to go for, just to give you some insights and backgrounds. I have a Facebook group and people join that. I don't like people sending me CVs now, because obviously it's data protection. So I only want a CV if I'm looking for a role specifically. And I may, some companies hire me to do a sort of selective find, can you find me X or Y? So I might take a pool of people that I think actually they've got the right credentials. Yeah, I think it's really, there are so many places now where you can sort of send your CV to on a sort of ad hoc, but I think be really, really sort of clear about looking for those opportunities and then applying, as opposed to just sending them out. Because the worst thing you can have when you're working in a company is for you to get the CV, the person next to you to get the same CV, the person behind you to get the same CV, and you just think, gosh, this person's got no sense of who they're actually sending it to. So you've really got to do your homework and work out who in the company you can send your CV to, what places where you can find jobs being advertised. And occasionally I'll put jobs up on the Facebook page and people will apply, or I'll share stuff that's going around the sort of creative network. So, wherever the jobs come up, I'll put it on the site as well. So that's kind of how I work, how I did work.
And Kathy, for you, what sites would you recommend?
In terms of general sites, I mean, obviously anybody is very welcome to send their CV to us, because obviously we are a recruitment agency. Now, just before everyone rushes to do that, clients tend to pay us for finding people who have some experience in the industry. So if you've got zero experience, it probably wouldn't be the right opportunity. In that case, I would say, probably, looking to some of the networks, like, for example, keeping an eye on what Michelle's doing. Keep an eye on Grapevine Jobs, which is often will have junior roles on there. There's also things like, I think there's one called, is it called Shooting People or something like that?
Shooting People.
Yeah, which is very good, because
yeah.
I know we shouldn't be promoting no pay work, but actually it's quite good, because on there is no pay, low pay, and it's always useful to get a couple of credits on your CV which maybe you've actually volunteered for before you can then start getting paid. I definitely wouldn't recommend not being paid continuously for jobs, but it's a nice way of just getting a couple of credits on there, which actually gives you a bit of credibility.
We will come to that, because I think that's the point that needs just a little bit more sort of discussion. I've got a couple of sort of quick fire questions here from the audience. So anyone who wants to chip in with an answer in this one can. When looking for an industry-based position in the field of editing, should you include all the awards your project has gained? Anyone got in this?
Yeah. Of course, any awards, any recognition for work that you've done. And I know that a lot of people have student awards and stuff, but if you show me a link to your work, it's the beginning. But if you're a few years down the line, absolutely.
Great.
Brag.
Next one. What if you were new to the film and TV industry, but not in your career? So you've got some experience elsewhere, I think.
Well, a lot of other careers are applicable. I got my first job working on a television show because I'd worked in a cinema and managed a restaurant. So they felt I could be a really good office manager, doing inventory, serving the staff, and keeping everything organized in the office. So definitely that would be a great thing to put on your profile or your skills section of your CV, pointing out how you've managed money, petty cash, office orders, and there's transferable skills. So also, you can find places that have relevant training or can support you in building a CV that can present your relevant skills as well.
Great. What advice would you give to someone looking to transition from, say, commercials into scripted drama? What should they be looking to highlight in their CV?
I would say that it's always a difficult transition, but it is possible. If you're looking for scripted drama, then probably the best way would be to approach all the scripted drama companies, but it is the best way to do it, is to write to them and offer to do script reports. because that's probably the first step in terms of being able to write, you know, to start doing the development and the research, would be to offer to write script reports. Now, again, it's not going to be very well paid, that first job, but it gives you the opportunity to get the experience in reading a script and being able to comment on it, you know, doing a précis of the characters, putting together thoughts on, you know, characterization, set, the storyline, and then obviously there's recommendations for, you know, how things may change. Those are what are done professionally when anybody reads a script that's been submitted to a company. So if you can get some of those behind you, and then you can actually start saying who you did it for in terms of scripted drama companies, then again, you're beginning to build up a credit list.
I think that's a really good point as well, talking about that. One of the things that there's a really good book by Lucy Sher about script development, which I recommend to everybody who hasn't done it to read, and also read scripts on the BBC website as well, BBC Writers' Room. They've got scripts available just to get some sort of insight into how scripts work. There's a question here which is quite specific, but I think it's also something that we should actually discuss for people who there's a person who's put that they've got a chronic disease that sets them back when applying for opportunities. They're not available for set work right now as they're shielding. How can they best maximize their career in this time? And I think this slightly touches on what you were saying there, Kathy, about reading scripts. But, you know, when you can't go out and you are sort of, you know, having to shield, what advice would you have for somebody who has to shield at the moment?
I think it's actually a really great time. It's offered a lot of potential, the way we've learned to be adaptable and work from home. There's a lot of production coordinator work and post-production coordinator work and script reading work and PA work that's primarily being done from home in flexible hours.
So often in the roles I fill, you know, it all depends on living in a specific area, usually London, sadly. But what I'm finding now is that, you know, people can be living anywhere in the UK or abroad and still be able to do a job. And what's nice is they are being seriously considered for it, rather than just being discounted. So actually, I think for people who are shielding, there are opportunities now which would have been sort of barred from them before. So I think it is just making sure you're networking and getting in touch with people who might be looking.
And I always think as well that, you know, ideas are your currency. So this is an ideal time to start thinking about your ideas and watching so much content. I mean, you know, this is the best time to see what's going on all around, from all the sort of streaming channels to all the broadcast channels, and really getting a feel of what it is that you like and what it is that really sort of motivates you to watch it, and why, and sort of start to pull things apart and try and work out how they've been put together. Because when you go in to speak to someone about a role or about something and that particular company has made that program, you've got such a good insight. This is I know it's a sad time and it's a difficult time for people to be on their own, but it's a really good time to start honing in and digging deep about what it is that you want to be doing and how you want to be doing it. So take the time, you know, take a breath and take the time, because it's we probably won't get this time again.
I'm going to move on from this topic because I think some of this will be answered as we go along, but that leads nicely into interviews, and a lot of interviews are happening on Zoom now. How does one prepare for an interview? What are your tips? I mean, we were light earlier on.
Yeah. I think the most important thing is to have a rehearsal beforehand. There are so many different, I don't know about you guys, but in the time that I've been working at home, you know, there's Teams, there's Zoom, there's goodness knows what, and there's probably about 5 different ones, and they all need downloading, they all work differently. So that would be my first tip, is to make sure that you have downloaded the correct software. You can always go on, you can check what the lighting looks like, you can check that you've, you know, got something decent behind you, and just make sure that everything is working beforehand. That would be my first tip. I mean, I can go on to interviews, but I'm sure somebody else would like to come in there as well.
I think what you said, Kathy, about background, you know, said flowers, said picture, you know, bookcases. Try and make sure that your background, because we all haven't got, like, you know, fancy places, and especially if there's 4 or 5 of you sharing a house, or you're at home and you've got younger siblings, or you know, everyone's around, you might have to be in your bedroom, but just tidy up a little bit, you know, because what happens in a Zoom call is we're all looking, going, oh, oh, that's nice. Or, oh my God, the other day I was having a said Zoom call and I realized there was a toilet roll because I had to be in the bedroom and there was a toilet roll just there, and I kind of was doing this quite slowly thinking, just yeah. But you do get caught out. So I think what Kathy says about practicing in front on whatever, if it's Zooms or Teams or whatever, is to practice, check yourself out. We're all having problems with lighting now because it's winter and it's darker, but just try your best.
Rebecca, any Zoom tips?
Well, we were actually doing Zoom interview tips with our network, and there were a few individuals who were really intimidated by the process. And I think that's natural. You're sort of self-conscious, you're looking at yourself, the lighting. And what I would recommend is before your interview, Zoom with a friend or Gmeet with a friend on the same network in the same space, and just get used to hearing yourself and seeing yourself. Have them throw some questions at you that you might likely be asked. I have a tip that I personally like, which is, I'm not at the minute, but sitting on a pillow just to be up a little bit higher, lift your laptop up a little bit higher. I think the height gives you a little bit of confidence. Have a glass of water and just make sure you do lots of good breathing and stretching and that superhero pose before you go on. Those little things can help you relax and just be your best person on a Zoom interview.
I even did it before today doing this call. I do that. I saw that TED talk where the woman said, go and stand in front of a mirror for 2 minutes. And actually all it is about centering yourself and breathing and just relaxing yourself into the moment. But it does really help to change things. I just talking about that, doing things funnily, I had a Great Wall of Vagina mug on an interview with the whole load of people. Didn't realize that I was holding up this mug that had loads of plaster cast pictures of vagina. So yeah, it took me a while to realize that, and I went, oh geez. So it can happen, and just make light of it if things go wrong. People are wouldn't you agree, people are very sort of accommodating. We are getting used to this kind of new normal.
They're in the same place and they're adjusting as well. We're not used to interviewing this way, and we're looking at ourselves in the lighting, so natural.
Can I just add one other thing, which I think we're all doing. I'm sure I'm doing the same thing, but the automatic thing is to look at the person you're talking to, but that isn't necessarily at the camera. So if I'm looking at the camera and then I'm looking down, if you can, try and look at the camera, because then you are making eye contact with your interviewer rather than looking at the person on the screen, which might actually be down in the bottom right hand corner. So you're then talking to them. So it actually makes a real difference if you're looking at the camera, but it can be off-putting because then you're not looking at the person. But maybe just be aware of that when you're talking to somebody.
Good point. And then asking people, just like for interviews, not necessarily having to ask people or look for an interview, but sometimes reaching out and asking people for a coffee on Zoom, like a 15-minute sort of. I know that a lot of casting directors and other producers, myself, were meeting with writers and actors and directors coming through the industry and just having a 15-minute one-to-one chat, because we're all looking for who are the new people coming up. So what are your thoughts on just reaching out and asking people for informal sort of coffees and chats?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I do keep it to 15 minutes though, because I think you have to be then concise. Remember, whoever you're asking for a coffee for, they're very busy, and I can be on a Zoom call from 8:30 to 6, 7 o'clock at night with barely a break. So this is the world that we have now inherited, and everyone expects you to be on Zoom all the time. So I think you just just understand that whoever you're asking the favor of will absolutely, because we're not going anywhere, will absolutely want to talk to you, but keep it really brief and concise to 15 minutes.
Okay, I've got a question here, which is somebody who's saying about editor training roles. How often is it appropriate to check in with post supervisors to let them know you're open to work? I'm going to rephrase that. How often should you check in with people about letting them know that you're available for work? What are your views on this? I'll start with you, Rebecca.
We recently did a session on LinkedIn networking, and we're encouraging people to reach out more than they normally do, more than they feel is comfortable for them. And the reason for that is we're not having any foot traffic, we're not meeting people on other jobs, and we're not networking in the normal ways. So to try to push us all out of our comfort zone a little bit. But I think the way that you present yourself in a non-aggressive way, just saying, how are you doing at the minute? Are you quite busy? Just wanted to let you know I'm between jobs. If you write and ask someone, can you give me a job? It can be quite intimidating, but just saying, I've just finished work on this and I'm in between jobs. So if you're busy at the moment, I'd love to catch up. That to go through your CV for the last 3 years and gently reach out to anyone, any HR contacts or anyone who paid your paychecks for the last 3 years, and just give them a soft reach out and say, how are you doing? Are you busy at the moment? I'm between jobs. I think is a really good idea. And using LinkedIn to follow companies that you admire and gently reach out to them, let them know you're available, I think is always important, especially now.
Okay, we have a couple of questions asking about things that we've mentioned already, and just to note that this is available afterwards on YouTube on the BAFTA channel, so you can watch it again and just fast forward through the bits where we were talking about that are no longer relevant to you to find the things that we have listed, including the websites and the roles. I'm going to move on to networking, and because I think that some of the questions that are coming up are relevant to that. So how to make the most of networking events. Now I keep going on about this two-shot pass. So in the normal world, when we're out, where when we're allowed to mingle, where are the sort of places that you can network with people? What would you suggest? Anyone on this? Michelle, can I come to you on this?
You know, people put up, I mean, basically you use your social media and social media will tell you, oh, we're having a networking event. You're like, I think Rebecca said you follow people on LinkedIn and you'll find out when they're doing their networking events. If I'm ever doing anything, I'll stick it out there and on Twitter or I don't do Instagram as well as I ought to, but, you know, you stick it all out there to say there's a networking event happening here and, you know, people turn up. I always advise you to turn up to networking events. And I know it's hard sometimes. And I know you'll walk in, there'll be somebody who's loud and everybody knows and it's all fun. But you know what? It doesn't matter. You walk in there and remember who you are, you know, fix your crown and walk in and just sort of try and listen to what's being said. Because normally at networking events, there's somebody's a speaker or a couple of speakers, you know. If it's really of interest, you go and seek those people out. Just talk to people, and I find that you keep your networks. You just keep going. You keep meeting the same little group of people, and one by one, they will start to look after you. So if I'm on a job and I think, oh, I know, I was working with Peter last, or I was at the event last week. Let me give him a call, and that's kind of that informal network is so important. And it's such a good thing to kind of keep people upbeat as well when things aren't going the way that they want.
Okay. Yeah, I think networking, you know, as well as events, I think it's using every opportunity to its full as well. So even if you've just got a day's job, just make sure that you have gently got everybody's on that sheet you can, you know, their email address or their phone number, and just to follow up the next day, just say it was great working with you, you know, I'd love to work with you again, do let me know if they've got some work coming up or something like that, just so that you use every single opportunity to expand that network and then follow up with them, and before you know it, you know, as Michelle says, suddenly you start a group of people who you've worked with before, and then they'll call you back, but continue to extend that network every time you're on a job.
Yeah. Okay, Rebecca, any thoughts on networking?
Well, I just really encourage everyone who's listening to make sure you have a LinkedIn profile, because a lot of companies are using it as a way to source crew and find out who's available. And we even heard from a few of them that they'll run a search for runners or PAs, and they'll give priority to people who are following their companies. So if you're following a Netflix producer or BBC or Channel 4 or a particular program you're interested in, make sure your LinkedIn is presenting you as looking for work, and follow as many companies, shows, and individuals as you possibly can. That would be my networking advice right now.
Yeah, and I think just following on from what Rebecca said, you know, there's your LinkedIn professional profile and there's your social media profile. And I know that we want to be funny, but sometimes you've just got to temper down your social media profile, because when people are looking at you, they're looking at all sorts of things. So if I want to find out about someone, I'll look at their professional profile, I'll look at their Facebook profile, I'll look, you know, and please do not be under any illusion that does happen. People do check up to see that fully rounded person who's coming into work for them and what they're like, and they'll automatically make some kind of judgment about you before you've even walked through the door. So just be aware of how you're coming across on social media. There's nothing wrong about having a joke and a laugh, or keep your stuff quite private. So don't have it completely open that everybody can see everything about you.
I think
they absolutely do. They absolutely do. I've got two examples where we have placed candidates into jobs, and then through something on their social media profile, whether it's a comment or it's historical, even something quite a long way away, something they were wearing or doing or saying, the job was withdrawn. So more and more, quite a senior level as well, HR or other senior managers are looking at people's social media profiles. So be really aware of it.
I think it's also human nature now, because we're seeing a lot of people interviewed and hired for jobs without ever being able to physically meet them. So I think employers are feeling, a tendency to Google them and get to know what they look like and who they are for confidence, buyer confidence, sort of.
I think that's a really good point. But there's two things that I've always remembered is somebody's smile and somebody thanking me. And I think that those are great networking tools that people don't often remember, because particularly if you're coming in and you've got somebody who's new and coming into the workplace, and we're going to talk about the workplace next. But one of the things that you notice is if somebody comes in with a big beaming smile and seems to be quite upbeat, that goes a long way, because it's quite stressful, the workplace. So somebody coming in with a really great energy goes a long way, doesn't it?
Definitely.
It's a very small thing. And also personal hygiene is a really big thing, which people may be odd about, but it's true. We're working in small confined spaces on sets and in some offices, and not all of it is socially distanced, and it's particularly if you're in bubbles. And it's just something to be aware of. And I always bring it up on sets. It's one of the first things that I ask people to talk to each other about, and just be really clear that, you have to be mindful of your working environment.
Also, think of the hours that you're working on a lot of these television shows and film shoots. My first job out in LA, working on a Muppet television show, they told me point blank, you didn't have any experience. The other people that interviewed had much more experience than you. This was just to be a receptionist, an entry-level job. But they said, we were thinking about the long hours and the late nights, and you just seemed like a lot more fun to have in the front office. So I think do smile, do look interested and enthusiastic. It goes a long way.
Yeah, in fact, it was one of the first things I was going for my first job at the BBC, and I was really nervous because about 250 people had gone for this role, and they got it down to like 5. And I really, really wanted it. And I remember going in, and the security guard said to me, "You going up for your interview?" And I said, "Yeah." He went, "Give them that amazing smile. Walk in with that smile." So I went in and hi, and I just kept this smile the whole time, and it makes you upbeat if you keep that smile on your face. Well, I didn't look demonic, I'm sure I didn't, but I got the job. So basically what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that was the reason, but absolutely, when you change the energy of a room when you're being interviewed, it's so nice. It's just, because if you're interviewing, you could be interviewing 10 people, one after the other, and someone comes in and just has, smells nice, dresses. I don't expect them to be like suit and tie or anything, but just clean clothes. You just, it's you see that somebody's made an effort, and that's really important.
Kathy?
I think I agree with all that. I think that makes absolute perfect sense, really. It's just about standing out. That's the most important thing, isn't it? It's just finding those ways to stand out. One thing I'd just like to go back to flip, it's probably, I don't know, question behind this one, but just one other thing about going back to networking was we were talking about approaching people for coffees and that type of thing. And please make sure that when you do write to somebody on an email saying, could I have that coffee, that you make it relevant. I think Rebecca said about, people will actually choose people who are interested in their company. Just make sure that when you drop them an email, just say, I've watched that program, I loved it. And that will be the difference between getting that coffee and not. And I just wanted to pick up on that before I forgot to say it.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. I mean, and also because you are seeing lots of people at a networking event, if someone jogs your memory, I was the person with X and Y and I said this, you go, oh yeah. Or,
exactly.
You know, so you need a little point that kind of makes, oh yes, I remember.
Yeah, it's going back to about standing out without Absolutely. Being an idiot, just standing out, what that little extra, you know.
And I would like to add that also in the same vein is that flattery will take you so far. Everybody likes being flattered, and that's a great place to start with networking. So if you watched 3 shows last week that you loved, you watched Des, The Crown, reach out to people that worked on that and just say, that is the best show I have seen during lockdown. It would be an honor to speak with you for advice for 5 minutes and see what other projects you're working on. I'm between jobs as a screenwriter or a cameraman, and I think everybody likes flattery, especially now. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily an opportunity to show off what your analytical skills about the lighting and whether the show worked and whether you felt it was overwritten, because some people can start off with that about show feeling that they need to show their complete knowledge.
It's the emotion, isn't it? It's the emotion, it's how it made you feel and what you really got from it. And I think when I made programs, if somebody came up to me and said, I really love such and such and I like this, and they were able to, like I said before, dissect it a bit, criticize it maybe, not too harshly, but it just makes you think, that's made a difference, or I like the fact. And so you remember that person, and as Kathy said, you've stood out.
And if you aren't interested, it can hurt you. I put forward a researcher for a job, and he had all the relevant training and experience, but in the end he didn't get the job because he couldn't even fake enthusiasm for the project that they were working on. He really wanted to work on scripted drama, and it was a documentary. So I think maybe we don't all have the luxury to work on the type of genre that we prefer at the minute, but certainly you can find a way that a documentary interests you, I think, to present enthusiasm in an interview.
Yeah, I mean, people do start on factual programs, and it's all about the storytelling. So, learn your storytelling craft. Obviously, script is slightly different in the sense that you're working with somebody's script or somebody else's words, but it's still, when you're out there thinking about it, it's about the story and how you can tell that story. And I know somebody who went from factual documentaries into scripted because their sense of story was so strong, and they proved themselves. So I think it is all possible. So don't ever sort of think, oh, that's not going to get me anywhere, or I really want to do this, because drama is so tough to get into, and it's people don't move. People love where they are. It's an amazing place to be in. So people are not shifting over to give you, whereas factual, I think there's much more of a churn of people, so there are more opportunities.
I want to come back to a point that you were talking about earlier, Kathy, which is about sort of work experience and short placements. People are kind of reluctant maybe to commit to something for a short time or commit to something working for free. And I just want to get your thoughts on that, and I'll come around to each of you, because I think it's a really important thing, that balance between getting paid and not getting paid, but getting some experience on your CV and not.
Yeah, I think in every industry, there's absolutely no problem in actually working for a few months for very little money in order to be able to get experience. And sadly, it's not very fair in the media business. I mean, things are changing. So now actually there's an awful lot happening in different parts of the UK. At one stage, certainly when I was joining the industry, unless you're in London, I came from Yorkshire, a small village in Yorkshire, there was nothing. So the opportunity to do something for free, when I was trying to pay, money on a flat, there was just no way I could do that. So I think, it is really tough for a lot of people to have to work for free to get some experience. However, it does help. So if you can do a couple of things, if you can afford to do it, then it will get your foot in the door. But I would really recommend you only do that for a few months. And then, you've got that experience. You deserve being paid for it, even if it's minimum wage. but you're able to get a couple of credits. Obviously, if you've been to university or you've been to film school, you will have some credits anyway, even if they were university films, and you should have links through to those. So make sure you get those. But it is a very difficult, and I know some people might disagree with me and say you shouldn't do anything for free, but I think it is a way of just getting a little bit of experience on your CV.
I mean, I think I sort of disagree, because in TV we fought really hard for this not to happen, because people are taken advantage of. So generally it's 2 weeks. You can have a 2-week work experience which is not paid, but anything over that 2 weeks you have to start paying them, and it's London living wage. So I'd always advise you to work with companies who do London living wage, especially in television. I think in film it's probably a little bit different, and I think it's not as I'll say structured, but I think there's more opportunities to do things for free. I started, when I think about my sort of telly career, as going off and doing something in Wapping for free. I wrote to them and I said, I really want to work in this studio, and they said, yeah, come in. And I would have done anything for free, but I was in a situation where I suppose I could. I think a lot of people aren't in that situation, so therefore you get this sort of inequality of those who can afford to be at home or be subsidized by their parents or whatever to do something. And yet there are those who have to work. So it's very difficult to do that. And I don't really endorse it. I think that there are lots of companies who will give you work experience, and then if you're good, they'll call you back. On Come Dine With Me, one of the things that we did every 2 weeks was to have a 2-week work experience person. They'd come in, they'd learn the ropes, they'd learn all different sorts of things, including picking up a telephone, which is really interesting, because that was really interesting more than anything. But and then, after 3 or 4 weeks, we might call them back in and say, do you know what, we've got a job for you, it's for 3 months. And that's how it starts. So I think there are lots of ways in where you can do a very, very short period of not being paid. But again, a lot of TV companies now are actually paying you right from the jump. They're not even giving you the 2 weeks. They're paying you because they think it's unfair.
Okay, Rebecca?
I feel very strongly as well. I mean, it's one of the reasons why diversity is such a problem in the industry, because for the last 20 years, you had to be willing to relocate and work for nothing for 6 to 18 months, which I had to do and put myself into debt. And I think the industry as a whole is really pushing back on this. So we won't advertise anything that's below the London living wage, because we'll delineate between, there's a lot of paid training charities where you can learn while you get paid a minimum wage. And then I think there's a lot of entry-level positions, but we're really trying to encourage the industry to at least pay people a basic salary if they're entry level, to try to, support the industry.
I think there's a difference between a bona fide TV production company bringing in somebody to work for free. I totally agree. I think that's really not on. However, there are lots of opportunities where there may be somebody making a short film who's actually got the money together themselves. They've got £5,000, but they actually need a DOP. They need a production manager. They need a lighting cameraman. And those are the sort of opportunities which I think, actually, let's not use the term for free. Let's use the term volunteering. Because I think then it takes you into a different thing, because you're all in it together. You've got £5,000 to make a 20-minute film, but you're actually getting really good skills, which are behind you from film school or university or nothing. Maybe you've not had any formal training, but it gives you that experience, and you can still put it on your CV. Just call it volunteering work. So I think I totally agree with both of you that nobody should be taken advantage of when that job should be being paid. But I think there are lots of other opportunities for volunteering where you can get experience, which you can then use on your CV.
Okay, I wanted to go to, I'm going to move, because we've only got 15 minutes left, and I want to pick up on some of the questions that have been asked. And these are quick fire answers if we can. You guys are doing brilliantly on all the notes, and we haven't even touched the networking in COVID, but I think this is it. This is how it attending these things. One of the things that somebody mentioned, which I think is a really good point, and somebody else mentioned it elsewhere, should they put whether they have a disability or whether BIPOC or not, should they include their, their origins on their CVs or not?
We
sorry.
Interview stage. Sorry. Wait
Not
till
okay. Michelle?
I don't think you need to put it on, but I think if you feel that you want to put it on, then put it on. I mean, I think the thing is that that shouldn't be the thing that determines whether or not you're going to get the job or not. It might have an access issue. It might mean that, I have to find someone in the office who deals with certain types of disabilities, especially if they're hidden disabilities. But I think that I've seen CVs where people have put it on, and I've seen CVs where they haven't. I've had CVs and then someone calls me and says, I haven't got it on my CV, but I've got X. And I'll say, that's not a problem. It's not a problem, come in. So, there are different ways of doing it. And it depends how, I suppose, how well you deal with your own disability and your own confidence about it. But it is difficult. It is a challenge for someone to sort of say, oh, well, there's this, because it's, people think that they're not going to get a job, or they're not going to get interviewed, or they're not going to get asked for a coffee or whatever, or people are going to think how they're going to get up the stairs, or how they're going to get, there are all sorts of prejudices, and they're still there. There's no two ways about that. But what the industry is doing and working really hard on is the sort of inclusiveness. And I wouldn't be afraid, if you don't want to put it on your CV, pick up the phone and give someone a call once you've got the interview and just let them know. And I mean, that way it's clear. If you want to turn up to your interview, and I've had this before, people turn up and I had no clue whatsoever, because it didn't present itself. But then when something happens and I don't know, that's a scary thing, because you don't know what to do or how to deal with it. So, you've got to have a responsibility to yourself and to the rest of the team around you.
Okay, I'm going to move on because we have only got 10 minutes and so many questions. I'll come to you on this one, Kathy. When contacting production companies directly about potential roles, who is the best person to speak to? Producers, talent managers, other roles?
It depends what you do. From experience, if you're, so let's assume everybody here is relatively junior. So maybe you're going to be going for a runner's job or a production secretary's role, something like that. Then from experience, the best person to contact you is the person you'd be reporting to. So if you're going to send your CV to the exec producer, that exec producer is going to actually pass that on to the production coordinator, the production manager. So I would do research and make sure that you are sending it to the right person. So probably in this situation, a production coordinator, or if it was going to be the lighting, the third assistant director, or somebody who you think, well, I'd probably be reporting into this person because they're most likely to be hiring that job. Whereas if you're sending it to the MD of the company, much as he may look at it and go, that's a great CV, all they're going to do is pass it on to the appropriate person. Would you agree, guys?
Yeah, I think the talent managers of the they're the ones, and being an ex-talent manager, absolutely, the CVs would all come to me. Wherever you send them, they'll end up with me.
Yeah.
And I think that, if you find out who the talent manager is, or the production manager, if it's more sort of crew side, then, those are the two people that you should be sending CVs to.
Okay, I'm going to come to you, Rebecca, on following up, on how to write a follow-up email and when to reach out to somebody you've contacted before. How is it appropriate, or when appropriate?
General following up, if you're looking for work, like I said, reach out to networks that have employed you before. Maybe don't ask them for a job, but ask them for advice on where you might look. What other companies would you recommend? If it's an interview, I always encourage you to follow up. I had an interview last year and I asked for feedback, and that feedback has been invaluable to me. So if you can get feedback from an interview, I definitely encourage you to do it politely.
Very good point. There's a question about age going against you, being a person of a certain age. Should that stop you in your tracks or not?
No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. Being of a certain age. No, it shouldn't at all. And I think, to be honest, the world is changing. I think employers are now much more open to looking at people from absolute all walks of life, whether you are over 50, whether you are female, whether you have a disability, whether you are BAME origin, it's a different world now. And also, you do not need to put your age on your CV. That's very, very old hat now to put your age on CV. And there's also, don't feel that you have to, say if you get way to the 80s, like I do, don't feel you've actually got to write every single job down. You can always go early career and just put a couple of bullet points, so actually you could quietly knock off 5 years without lying on your CV. It's just gently taking off maybe some of those sort of earlier dates, shall we say. So no, absolutely not, go for it.
So we have a few questions here about agents and your thoughts on agents and best way to sort of meet with agents and agencies, people looking for representation and whatnot. What are your thoughts on this, or do you have any thoughts on literary agents? I can pipe in on this one. I know it a little bit. I think picking up on something that Michelle said earlier, don't email every single agent in the company is a big one that they have. I would also say Charlotte Knight has a do's and don'ts on her website. They've been sent bars of chocolates, which they love, but they said, it's not going to make us reply to a CV any sooner. They want to see a sample of your work. Look on their website to see whether they take unsolicited material or not. But if you've got something that's of interest at the time, that's when they really want to hear you. If you haven't got anything made at that point, they're not going to change your career magically overnight. You have to kind of have to be proactive yourself out there in the industry and have a bit of a buzz behind you. So I'll just do that. A question about how many times do you reach out to the same person? That's a tricky one. Anyone on that one? I would say once for the follow-up. But
it depends how badly you want to be working for that company, actually. I mean, yeah, you get those who pester on a sort of every 2 or 3 days. You get, hi, I haven't heard from you. Hi, I haven't heard from you. And you just think, oh, I have so much more to do. I cannot spend enough time. And I've had a couple of people like that recently, and it does jar in a way, because you just think, hold on a second, do you not realize the world is very big and I have a lot to do? And I'm not being pompous or anything, but it's quite difficult to sort of spend a lot of time in a reply. However, I think if it's every couple of weeks and that sort of softly approach that I think we mentioned earlier, just that sort of, hi, how are you? I've been watching such and such, are you well? All those sorts of things, you think, oh man, I should really contact that person again. And it's just a non-aggressive kind of email or a text or on your LinkedIn profile that you just think, okay, yeah, I will call them. And you just have to be understanding that people are not purposely blanking you, ghosting you, whatever the phrase is. They're literally just full on. It's full on. And in this Zoom, it's full on. Your world is like I say, taken up with a camera from 9 till 6.
I wanted to talk to you about something that we haven't sort of talked about before, but rejection, which I think is a really tough one, and everybody's experienced it. And just your thoughts on rejection and with that tenacity. Rebecca, I'll come to you on this one.
Well, I think if you're sensitive and you don't like rejection, this is probably the wrong industry to be in, especially if you're freelance. Unfortunately, it's a bit like acting in that you are waiting for opportunities to come along to a degree. And one of the main struggles, no matter how good your CV is, continuity and getting another job after the current job finishes. So, I mean, obviously there's exceptions because you could work for a company and be corporate, but I think you're going to have a slightly thick skin and be very resourceful if you want to work as a freelancer.
Okay, Kathy?
I agree. Yes, it is one of these industries where you do have to be thick-skinned. However, you just need to not give up. As long as every time you get a rejection, you are polite, responding back to them saying, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming back to me. There's no reason why you shouldn't, go back to them in a couple of months and just say, look, I'm still actively looking. I think you just have to be tenacious and not give up. But it is difficult, and you will get rejections. Just take a walk around the block, take some big breaths and think, right, okay, on with the next. Don't take it personally. That's the most important
I was just
thing.
about to say that. Don't take it. It's not
Yeah.
personal.
Yeah.
If you've got 15 people going for one role, 14 people are going to be rejected.
Yeah.
So it's not personal. It's sometimes if they can give you a little insight into what you could do better for the next time, that's always valuable. But it's not personal.
So a couple of other things people were asking about, networking over coffees and asking people for what should you talk about, and that's being prepared. It talks a little bit about what we were talking about earlier. Rebecca, you look like you've got.
Do your research. I mean, don't just hit somebody up for a job. I mean, go and research them and read LinkedIn, see what they're passionate about, what they blog about, what they're watching, what they're producing. And it's like going out on a good date. If you're going to sit there and talk about yourself, it's going to be awkward. But if you're going to talk about them, you're probably off to a good start. That's my advice.
Anyone else got any tips on this?
Yeah, I think concentrate on the people that you actually want to talk to. So be armed with what you want to talk about, and be ready to ask them questions. I think if you're literally just basically calling everybody, you are going to end up maybe not have the time or the energy to do that research, and you're going to have wasted that opportunity. It's a bit like applying for a job you have no chance of getting. Why put that time in? You're better making 10 phone calls or sending 10 emails to people you feel really passionate about and have something you want to say and ask them, than sending out 100 blank emails.
Yeah, I think it's about research and being prepared. It's like anything. There's no such thing as a coffee. Every time you meet someone, it's a mini interview. That I'm already sizing you up and thinking about you and where could I put you already in my head, and that's just something I can't help myself doing. So if I'm like that, I imagine a lot of people are like that. You want to know that the time you've spent with that person is worthwhile. So if they just go, well, I was just coming to see if you had a job, you think, well, I haven't got any jobs, so where is this going? You kind of need to have your game plan. You need to be able to talk about something. You need to be able to talk about yourself, but I don't mean like every single detail, but talk about what drives you and what you're passionate about, and what you've done. So just pick one or two key things, not your whole life story, but one or two key points, and then going on to what that person that you're meeting, what they've made, what programs they're working on, or what the production company makes, and in that way you're opening yourself up and you're sounding interesting. And the thing is, you just want to meet interesting people. There's so much talent out there. We're all scrabbling to find really good talent for something unique and different, and and you are all unique, so you all bring something to the table. It's just make sure that you do your homework, make sure you get the name right of the person you're seeing, make sure you've got the name right when you send them an email or a text. Please do that. Do not put your address on your CV. I think we mentioned something, but do not put your address on the CV. But if you can work anywhere in the country, say I've got a base in Manchester, Birmingham, and London, people go, oh, that's okay. But you don't need to say where you live, nor it's going to be with your granny or anything. It's just a case of don't put that on your CV. Sorry, I've gone back a bit.
No, but it is a really good point, because there's nothing worse than somebody turning up for an interview or a meeting with you and you have to tell them all about yourself and all about your company and what it's done. IMDb is a wonderful resource as well to check what people have worked with and who they've worked with if you're looking for topics and what they've worked on. That's another really good one. So final thoughts for this evening, sending everybody away. I know it's a strange time. People feel like so many doors are closed. Well, they can't even open their own doors at the moment and go outside unless it's for something specific. But it is a difficult time. This too will pass. Any kind of final thoughts, Rebecca? Piece of advice?
Be really encouraged. There's a lot of charities and executives and companies out there who know that the industry needs support. So there's a lot of support being offered right now to make sure that the industry survives this COVID. So go out there and research, screen skills, film and TV charity, Google apprenticeship in TV and film, Google trainees in television and film. There is a lot of entry-level positions there, and there's a lot of support. So be encouraged. People will expect you to send them a cold email because they know you're struggling to network. So there's a lot of philanthropy out there and people that want to help. So do definitely get Googling.
Great, thank you. Michelle, any final thoughts? I've got to
be kind to yourself. You know, don't beat yourself up. I think this is a very difficult time for everybody, including myself. It's not easy. It's not easy being stuck indoors and not going anywhere. And I think that we miss seeing you, and you as much as you miss seeing us. And I think just spend the time watching as much content, listening to your podcast, really getting an opinion of what it is that you want to do and what it is that you want to be working on.
And Kathy?
Yes, I would say that, you know, as you said, this time will pass. And before this happened and after the recession, the film and TV industry was one of the main industries which pulled the UK out of recession. There are huge new developments for studios, which will all happen in the next 2 or 3 years. So the TV and film industry is going to be doing really well. It is already, but it will go from strength to strength, and there will be lots of new opportunities. So, you know, like Michelle said, use this time to really develop yourself, look at what you want, make those connections, make sure your CV is up to scratch, but you will get a job because it's going to be great. I think I'm predicting next year, once this is over, and I'm sure it will be, there will be a massive resurgence, and there'll be so much work to do and so much work to catch up on, that there will be lots of work around. So I'm sure it will be a good year next year.
Yeah.
I'd also say to people, read the credits. That's your easiest way of doing your research. Read the credits at the end of shows and films. Make sure you do that switch over, because I know they go into the tiny little boxes and you need glasses and go blind. Read the trades. That's broadcast, screen, C21. Sign up for newsletters. You only even have to read the headlines to get an idea of the changes within the industry. And also keep checking into all these amazing events that BAFTA are running. So thank you to our 3 guests this evening, Rebecca, Michelle, and Kathy, and also thank you to Searchlight for this amazing festival and event. Thank you all. Wish you the very best. Wish we were all going to the bar afterwards for a drink, but sadly, let's drink alone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Take care.